Hello and welcome to another video from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. This is the first in a new series of videos called Meet the Manager, where we chat to an FPL manager with a more than enviable career history. We'll find out what it takes to get a top finish in the game. We'll find out their strategies for success and also get some top tips on tackling the current campaign. Today I'm joined by Nick, who is well known to many on social media and Twitter and Fantasy Football Scout as Triggerlips. Nick, welcome.
Hi, Joe.
What we have is your season history up on screen for us, and just having a look through that. Yes, it's pretty well. You know, you should be pleased with it because it's over your 11-year career. You've managed to finish in the top 1,000 on 4 occasions, including 2012-13's incredible finish of 35. Not many people get into the top 50. In your last 9 seasons, you've only finished outside the top 50,000 twice, and also in the last 3 seasons, you've dipped a little bit below your usual standards, but nevertheless, still pretty good ranks there overall. So, looking at that, really, I mean, a key question, I think it's the key question for all fantasy managers is, how do you get into the top 1,000? How do you get into the top 100? How do you get that top finish? What is your key advice for getting a really, really good rank?
Well, it's a bit of a mystery to me these days, but basically, I think you just got to be patient. You've got to look at all the information and not be hasty. You've got to not be impulsive. So we can all get access to the good players. We all know these days. We all know who the good players are because there's so much information around. But I think the difference is it's more in the mentality. You give 2 people the same information, and it's what people do with that information that makes the difference, I think.
So are there kind of key rules that you followed? I mean, looking back at those finishes there, the 434th, 776, 35th, 592, was there something similar in those seasons that you did that makes them really stand out from the others?
I think it's the same as I have been doing. Before then, I was just not taking the game seriously, really. I think 2009, 2010 would be when I really started playing the game.
I was thinking in terms of looking at kind of strategies, really. So, for example, being hit-averse is seen as a good strategy.
The templates.
Yeah. And by that, do you mean as in looking at
I always started with my template with the speed.
And by template, do you mean looking at... there's something I talk about a lot on the Scoutcast that bores people to tears about. I look at kind of spreading the budget and having various price points for players so that I can easily move around to follow and try and predict the template. Is that a kind of strategy that you deploy?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I've tried to adopt a kind of plug and play strategy where I could easily take out one player and put another player in of a similar price point. So it's very easy to transfer people in and out without having to disrupt the team too much. I've been doing that for quite a number of years now. I think that's quite crucial. So I allocate a certain budget for defence, midfield, attack, and have players of different price points within those areas. And it just makes it so much easier when you're making the transfers and everything.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So, for example, this season there's lots of, well, not lots, but there's a few options in that kind of 6.5 midfield category. So you can move in between, say, for example, Maddison, Richarlison, maybe Fraser, who's a little bit less. You can move quite easily because you've got that slot there ready and waiting for whoever's best performing. Is that the kind of best way of looking at it?
Yeah. This season is actually slightly different from all the others because this is probably the first season where I've actually put a bit more into defence, and I don't have that second premium midfielder at the moment because of Salah, really. Just the price of Salah and those really good Liverpool fixtures at the start meant that I was too scared to go without him. And I'm not so happy with my structure now as I was. So that's just happened this season. So
okay, well, I mean, we will talk about this current season.
I'm not happy with it at the moment.
A bit later, yeah, because you're kind of slightly out of your comfort zone with that. But as well as that's proves us another good example, perhaps, of a good strategy for success is spotting those types of trends, and that can be the way that FPL prices players and then adapting to them. So in previous seasons we've had, say for example, Ronaldo at 14 million, Van Persie at similar level, and we've had Harry Kane highly priced, and this year we've got Salah. So essentially the Salah from last season is 4 million more if you bought him early on this season, and you've got to adapt. So I mean, that sounds to me like a good way of adapting to it, in that you can't have two premium mids, or it's difficult to without sacrifices. So it's Salah or a cheaper one.
I did actually keep my budget the same for midfield. I kept the budget the same, but Salah just meant that there wasn't room for that second one. But there's been kind of a perfect scenario this season where you have cheap, expensive defenders doing well and all the cheap midfielders doing well. So kind of it's made Salah affordable and within that structure. But I think this is the first week where it's changing now. We're going to see it's not going to be so easy for people.
Okay. I mean, just look at other... I mean, how many hits, for example, do you take most seasons, particularly in those successful seasons there?
I've actually analysed my hits, and it's normally around 8 or 9, 10.
In terms of taking a hit, what are the circumstances, scenarios where you want to take a hit?
If I've got two injured players, or a player that I'm dropping in, someone like Mkhitaryan. If I had a Mkhitaryan and someone who was injured, then I would have done a hit last week.
Okay.
I don't like taking hits for good players. Like I could take a banger man out, the Arsenal striker out, for a hit. I was thinking of doing that last week, but I don't like to take out players that are playing and can outscore the ones that you're bringing in. I don't like those kind of sort of riskier type hits that can work or might not. When you're taking a hit for people that aren't playing or are really no good, then there's less risk involved, and it can freshen up your team and everything else. So I don't take a hit just for bring someone in just because they've got one good week, for example.
In those seasons where you've got a really high rank, what advice would you give to others who find themselves in that position in terms of handling the pressure, or is there indeed pressure?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I was pretty good at that, because I'd often think in all 4 of those years I got into quite a strong position early on. That year I finished 35th. I was in the top 100 for a very long time. I don't think I left the top 10,000 all season. I was in top 1,000 after about 5 or 6 game weeks, and I just played fairly conservatively. I think I was kind of watching what other people were doing. I was kind of protecting my lead in a way, not too much, but kind of I wasn't doing anything very differential, because I didn't need to catch up. So I was just playing it sensible, really, template type of stuff. So I was unlucky that year in a way, because I was doing really well. And then Debussy, I had -4, I think it was, for Debussy, just a few weeks from a finish. And I think I would have been higher than 35th, but that was a disaster.
And what about when you're lower down in the rankings at a particular time in a season? What advice would you give to be able to climb up the rankings? Because a lot of people then they start to panic and get wild cards out and hits and things. But what would your advice be?
Well, I really don't think you need to panic. I take last season as an example. I finished 18,000, but I think with 10 weeks to go, I was about 100,000. I didn't get within the top 100,000 until about 10 weeks from the finish. And all these chips and that have come in, they really skew the rankings. A lot of people have used their chips earlier in that, and they're ahead of you, and it doesn't kind of level out until after the serious players have used their chips, in the big double game weeks. I mean, you can make up so much ground in a big double game week, but you really don't need to panic. Even if you're like 200k or whatever, you can still come through with a reasonable finish. I tend to think of a reasonable finish. Top 1% I see as a good finish, and that changes every season. So this season I'm thinking 60,000 is a reasonable finish, because that's top 1% of playing population, whereas 5 years ago there were only about 1 million people playing. So like that was more like a top 10k.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you really in terms of how FPL has changed over the years, because a lot of, as you said, it's ballooned. So a lot of people watching this maybe have only had a couple of seasons, and they won't have experienced that kind of that level of the career that you've had there. So what have been the key changes over the years?
Yeah, first off is that just sheer increase in numbers makes a difference. Like I was saying just now, you kind of have to adjust your expectations, I think, because probably for every 1 million that join, 10,000 are going to end up playing the game seriously. And then there's chips. The chips, I really don't like the chips because they skew the standings and they add an element of luck to the game. And it's already a kind of luck-based game. I mean, over time, the luck diminishes, but it's still there. And things like the triple captain and that, they just add an element of luck. I mean, anything can happen with them. So the other changes is the massive increase in information now. I remember a time when we used to be on Fantasy Scout and there was really nothing else, maybe FISO and a couple of other places, just for like the hardcore dedicated players. But now, even my mini league at work, they're all on Twitter and everything and know what's going on. So just the general level of knowledge, I think, is increasing quite quickly now. So there's a lot of people catering for that as well, all these podcasts and websites setting up everywhere. So it does become more difficult, you know. So
I was thinking how I mean, something I remember because you ran a blog for a while about fantasy football, and one of the I remember reading a couple of articles on there about the kind of psychology of dealing with that level of information, this kind of information overload, and trying to decipher it. Because yes, it's good in one way in that everyone we've got easy access to information, but in some ways it's almost too much of it. What advice would you give in coping with that just sheer volume of information and advice?
That's true. It can, if you're not psychologically cut out for the game, it can actually be detrimental, I think, all of that. So you've got the price sites and everything. There's so much pressure to make transfers now and to have the same team as everyone else that if you're not careful, you know, you can end up making far too many transfers. I mean, we see this season so many people making their transfers on the Saturday night, Sunday. Sometimes it's all right. I think early in the season it's all right. But my general advice would be to not make any decisions in the heat of the moment and stay calm and just look at all the information. Not all information is equally good. And like you say, there's an overload of it and you just need to kind of step back. What I do is I go running and I make most of my decisions when I'm out running, when my head's clear and I'm not sort of being influenced by anybody else, because there's a lot of people influencing you all the time on Twitter and everywhere else, you know. So generally just to make decisions rationally and, you know, not kind of get too wound up in all of it. You can look at so many things and they all give you conflicting advice and can only make one transfer a week, so you know.
I think the point you make about the pricing is really key there, because the level of information about when players' prices are going to rise or fall is just getting better and better. The prediction sites are getting better, and there's more of them as well, and they're more widely seen. So it's actually influencing the price. And something I've noticed as well, people are really going for those price changes. You said they're making those changes early.
But that was key in my good years. Was I used to do that then? Though I'd always transfer players in to make money. That's one of my key strategies, is making money and building up team value. I've always been into that. But sometimes you need to know when not to do it. I think we all missed a trick the other week with Richarlison because I think we all felt under pressure to take him out because of price falls and whatever. And none of us really did very well. You know, we either got Walcott in or Pedro, and none of them really did very much. And it's cost 2 transfers. I just bought Richarlison back in yesterday. And for really, I mean, I'd have been better off with him on the bench. At least I would have got Wan-Bissaka's points yesterday. So I think we all missed a trick there. Sometimes we're all too keen and get too wound up in the prices. Because this week I've got to lose money on somebody. So, you know, sometimes you can't avoid it. It's
looking at your team now, and then looking at the kind of season ahead or kind of next 6 game weeks, what are your kind of key strategies? Looking at the form and fixture, how do you see your team changing?
Well, this is actually the first week where I started to become a bit concerned, to tell the truth, because I'm not liking the look of Salah one little bit. I'm worried about Salah. Before, it didn't matter if Salah blanked before because everyone had him. But now Hazard has risen up. I mean, it's creating a real concern because, I mean, if captain Salah this weekend, he only gets like 50 or 60 minutes and doesn't do anything. And the Hazard people are going to be flying ahead. And I really want to take him out, to be honest. I definitely see myself without Salah after next week. I'm too scared to take him out before Southampton. But at the same time, I'm not at all confident. And the rest of my team, I'm quite happy with, really. The Arsenal striker, he's not doing too good in the stat department, is he? He's not really passing the eye test.
Yeah, why is he there?
Well, he's actually, I know a lot of people saying this to me, but he's actually outscored Salah, Mane, Kane, and equaled points with Aguero for the last 2 game weeks. So he's not doing, in terms of points, he's not doing too badly. He's 13 points in the last 2 weeks, which is more than Salah and Mane. And I'm looking for a time to take him out, but I mean, I'm not sure before a home fixture with Everton is the right time because Everton was in at the weekend and I can see him getting some points. It's a good thing when you buy them when they've got good fixtures, even when they're not in total form. Against the likes of Everton, that might not matter. So Vardy's the one I'm looking at. Vardy for him.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking at fixtures, Leicester's fixtures are really good coming up. Vardy's good. A player I like is a young man called Lukaku. He's really just a steady scorer, and I was going to say he seems to fit with your strategy. Same price-ish as Aubameyang.
He does. I mean, that's partly why I brought the Arsenal striker in, so that I'd have money left over to buy Lukaku if I wanted to. So I'm still looking at that, but I just don't see this as the right week to do it. The Arsenal striker is quite annoying in that sense. Not only can't I pronounce his name, but it's just never the right time to take him out because his fixtures are so good. I think he's got Fulham next week, hasn't he, or the week after? So I think I'm just going to have to keep him another week or two, to be honest. I looked at taking him out for Hazard for a hit last week, but I didn't do that because I see Salah is my natural way to get into Hazard. So if I take Salah out, it'll probably be for Hazard next week. Even a Tottenham.
I was going to say, just finally looking at your team, looking at the defence. Now, you haven't got the classic Robertson, Alonso, Mendy, but you have tapped into some good defenders there with multiple price routes. So you've got David Luiz for the clean sheets for Chelsea. You've got Mendy there. And you've got Monreal as well. So what's your take on the defence? You spent a bit more than you usually would, but it's nowhere near as much as other people. So what's your take on the defence going forward over the next few weeks?
Yeah, I spent a bit more than usual. I kind of went a bit halfway there, really, didn't I? Because I didn't spend enough on it to get the really good ones. But I wild-carded after game week 2, and Liverpool's fixtures weren't great. And I thought about Trent Arnold, and then I thought, well, the fixtures aren't brilliant, so I'll avoid Roberts. And I'd kind of like to go a bit differential. And Monreal's quite attacking in his own right. I was very disappointed he lost the clean sheet after 92 minutes at the weekend. I lost his clean sheet and Cook's clean sheet the other day, and right at the last couple of minutes. And so I'm happy enough with Monreal, especially with his fixtures. David Luiz, I'm not quite so sure about, but he's good at free kicks and everything, so I'm hoping one of those goes in soon. But he doesn't cover Alonso. But I mean, most of this was so I could keep 2 top strikers, and that's my usual structure. But the cheap strikers are making a laughing stock of these expensive strikers at the moment. I mean, Bannerman's done okay compared with like Kane and everyone, but none of them are keeping up with cheap strikers. But it's a question of how long that'll last. Often these cheap strikers, points dry up, so so you don't know, do you? So people might be scrambling for Lukaku or someone in a week or two. and I'd be able to get him in easily.
And there was a player I mentioned this week on the Scoutcast, but Harry Kane, in that no one seems to be considering it at the moment. Quite rightly, his form is awful, but we know what he can do. Do you have a slight eye on Harry Kane, a kind of a Kane entry route possibly at some point?
At the moment, zero interest in him, zero, because he's quite expensive and he doesn't even fit into my structure. So I couldn't bring him in for Aguero or anyone. So not until after Salah's gone.
No.
I'd rather tap into the Tottenham midfield, I think. That's why I was looking at Vardy, because Vardy's only 8.9, and he would allow me to turn Pedro into either Eriksen, Dele Alli, Son, any of the Tottenham midfielders. So I'm quite looking at that. That's why I like to look at Vardy. So in an ideal world, I probably should do that straight away in a way, but I just don't want to take the Arsenal striker out. Not with Everton at home, because I know what will happen. You just score.
Okay, Nick. Well, thanks so much for joining me. It's been great chatting about your career and also about the current season, because it is a bit different this season. But for now, good luck with your game week. Good luck, Nick.
Okay, thanks for that. I enjoyed that.